Hi, everybody. Welcome to the ADHD and Executive Functions Workshop. This is session 1 for today. Alrighty, so my name is Shelby.
And I'm Carolyn.
And we will be your Wilderness Explorer guides for this presentation today. Next. All right, so before we get started, just wanted to go over a few Zoom rules with you folks real quick. So workshops will be in the webinar format. So your video and sound, we would like it to be both turned off for today. To ask a question, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And then at the end of Rocky's presentation, we're gonna go ahead and ask her your questions for you. So make sure if you have any, just write them down in that Q&A button. Also, just be kind, considerate, and respectful during this presentation. All workshops will be recorded and posted to the SPIN conference website soon. And also please help us by filling out this workshop evaluation using the link that I'll put in our chat box below. Oh, there it is. Okay. So if you folks needed subtitles or a live transcription, on the bottom of your screen, look for the CC live transcript box. Click on the up arrow and it will open a new window. Click on show subtitle and the captions will be on your screen. And you can also turn off the subtitles by hiding them as well. All right, so our expert guide for today is Ms. Rocky Knox. She is the assistant professor in the Department of Special Education at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. So without further ado, I'll let her go ahead and start her presentation.
Hello, hi all. Hold on while I share my screen with you. And let me know if it actually does so. Can you see my show?
Yes, we can.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, all right, guys. We are going truly wild today. We are going to go into space. We're going to live outside the boundaries of space and time. I am Rocky Knox. I work at the Department of Special Education at UH Manoa, but I was a former special education teacher in the Hawaii DOE for many years. And I am also a former child with undiagnosed ADHD and a current adult diagnosed with severe ADHD. And it took a while to get there and understand that. So I'm gonna be your alien guide today. I have my little space buns, but I'm not sure you can see them. Because I have the ability to create black holes of time and space when I hyper-focus into something and cannot get out of it. I also have the ability to make objects invisible, like when I lose my keys in my hands all the time. So with this presentation, because I have ADHD and I'm a very visual learner and I can't imagine sitting through 45 minutes of someone just talking at me, I'm going to use a lot of images and memes that I think are really helpful. And I will have a list of kind of the artists who do these at the end of the presentation. Okay. Okay, so what we're going to cover today. We're going to cover the criteria for an ADHD diagnosis. We're going to talk a little bit about how the ADHD affects daily activities. We're going to talk a little about behavior interventions and some teaching strategies, depending on what our audience is like, and then where to find resources on ADHD. But before we do that, I want to kind of get a sense of who is in the audience. So I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. And I'm going to ask you guys, the audience, to tell me, sorry, gotta get my screen up. There we go. Okay, I'm going to ask you guys to put your little raise hand button up. Do you all have a raise hand button? Can you let us know in the chat if you do? So, yes, okay, great. So if you guys could tell me I'm going to give you a different, if you are here because you are a parent looking for information, can you please raise your hand? Parent looking for more information on ADHD. So the little raising hand button. Okay. If you are an educator, can you, okay, so parents, undo the hands again, and then if you're an educator looking for more information on ADHD, can you press the little raise hand button? And then if you're just here looking for more information for yourself, can you raise your hand? All right, okay. Good mix, excellent. Thank you. Just wanted to get a sense. Now I'm gonna share my screen again. Hope it works. Oh, by the way, just to let you know, because of my issues with boundaries with space and time and difficulty, I not only have alarms set for myself to try to keep pacing, but I've also asked Shelby and Carolyn to jump in if I'm going over time. I want today to be kind of informal and fun. So let's get going. Okay, so let's just start briefly with what is ADHD, AKA attention deficit with hyperactivity disorder. So ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder. And what that basically means is you can see the functions in the brain with people who have ADHD are different. The brain regions activate differently. The size of certain brain areas is different. So what I'm trying to say is, don't let anyone tell you that ADHD is not very real, because we can see with people who have ADHD, we can see the differences in the brain. Also, it's highly genetic. So if you have ADHD, you have a 25 to 30% chance of at least one of your parents having ADHD or diagnosed with ADHD, maybe more. And you have about a 50% chance that of a sibling having ADHD. So it's very highly genetic. So let's go ahead and talk about the three primary symptoms with which kind of we use to characterize ADHD. And that is inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. Okay, so your inattention is that, in the name, it's the attention deficit, right? You're disorganized, have a really hard time paying attention to details, have troubles keeping focus or switching focus, right? And then you have hyperactivity, which is kind of our classic, in pop media and whatever. That's what we think of when we think of ADHD, a kid who's fidgeting, can't stay in their seat, always like a bundle of energy, right? And kind of hand in hand with both of those is impulsivity. And that is really not thinking before you talk or act. So having a really hard time waiting to talk, blurting out in conversations or in class, that sort of thing. Okay, so how is it diagnosed? Well, a doctor or a clinician uses the DSM-5, the DSM-5 criteria, which is basically their diagnostic standard, to go through and look at these symptoms that we talked about. So they kind of lump in hyperactivity and impulsive symptoms, and then also the inattention symptoms, okay? And so what they'll do is they will ask parents or teachers, and also use their own observations and self-observations to kind of see how many symptoms do kids have, and up to 16 years old, you need to have at least 6 or more symptoms across either category, right? And it has to be present for at least 6 months. It has to be present in different settings. So not just at home, but also at school or in the community. And it has to have a negative impact on daily functioning. So whether that's academic, social, or in your job. And once the clinician kind of checks off these different symptoms, they really look at where the balance is between the combination. And you have three types of ADHD. So you have your predominantly hyperactive, impulsive. Like we said, that's the kind of bundle of energy. We have your predominant inattentive presentation, and that's more of the quieter, spacey, not able to, kind of switch attention in and out. And then we have our fun combined presentation where we have enough on each category that we can say we have it all. So just briefly to let you know, typically the hyperactive type of ADHD is usually evaluated and diagnosed earlier, okay? Because, you get into school, K through 3, and what you're gonna have is a kid who cannot sit still. And so it's a more visible presentation. And the inattentive type can be diagnosed later because it's quieter. So you don't necessarily see it immediately. You're gonna find it after several years of kids like not turning in their homework or having a hard time staying organized, right? So just on a personal note, my brother was diagnosed with ADHD hyperactivity type at age 6. I got all the way through my high school and college and not diagnosed, not doing so great. My grades weren't great, but I finally got to grad school. I loved being a teacher and realized I wasn't able to really juggle everything. And I went in and I was finally diagnosed and it all made sense. Okay, so prevalence. So it's a mental disorder that most often occurs in children. And I would say not occurs, but it is when it's diagnosed or when it's found, because we have a lot of ADHD adults, it doesn't necessarily go away. It just can, as you mature, you might get some more coping strategies or compensation. And so it can be less obvious. Okay, but that's a lot of kids. That's a lot of kids, about 9% of the population, right? And there's a lot of talk about how, oh, ADHD is so trendy and big pharma, and why is it so trendy these days? And I'm just going to tell you, it's not. ADHD is old. You can find historical records all the way back to Greek Roman times of discussions that match, of people who match with attention problems and hyperactivity. This is documented in history. The difference really is that in the past, the ability to quickly react to stimuli and thrive with physical activity and take risks, that made you a leader and able to survive a lot of things. But now in our modern society, everything is about, kind of being able to control and regulate your actions, sit down for a long time, and multitask, right? So that's really why ADHD kind of feels so trendy. It's like now it's more of a problem, and now people are understanding, and so they are being diagnosed more often. Okay, so let's talk about what ADHD and what it isn't. And I will start with what it isn't. It is not a lack of attention, okay? It's the inability to switch attentions or to stay on one attention. It's really about self-regulation. ADHD is really about difficulty with self-regulation, okay? And that has a really big umbrella term. I added sensory processing to that little visual. So it's really about your own ability to control your internal body, cognition, emotion towards a goal. So whatever that goal may be, whether it's completing a task, whether it's trying to calm yourself down, that is what self-regulation is, okay? And so let's move away from just thinking about attention and let's really talk about self-regulation and the ability, and that means like the ability to stop and start what you're doing, the ability to use visual imagery, like, and that impacts your sense of time. So hindsight and foresight are difficult. Yeah, the ability to moderate your emotions and to plan and problem solve. Okay. So a lot of times we talk about ADHD as impaired executive functions, right? And so I just wanted to really quick do the thing again where I ask again, can you guys raise your hand if you have, I'm gonna stop share so I can see. Can you raise your hand if you know what executive functions are, have a fairly good idea of what executive functions is? Give some time. Okay. Okay, and then if you kind of have heard of it, but not really sure, can you raise your hand? Okay, cool, thank you. All right, back to it. So basically, executive function is very similar to self-regulation. And you know, some people have it, it's almost synonymous, but it's cognitive and emotional processes that all have to do with managing oneself and one's resources, right, to achieve a goal. So Brown's model of executive functioning, here are the different cognitive abilities that are impacted by ADHD. So it's activating, organizing, prioritizing, being able to start your work, be able to prioritize what's most important, focus, sustaining and shifting attention to tasks. So multitasking, so hard. Oh, so hard for me. So, and a lot of kids with ADHD, but I just want to remind you guys that not all kids have the exact same difficulties. So not all kids have the exact same symptoms. It's also emotion, so managing frustration and modulating your emotions over time. So, you know, kids who get maybe start having a tantrum and cannot self-soothe and calm down, right? And then memory, working memory, woo, hard one. It's really hard for kids with ADHD to activate a lot of their working memory. And the working memory is the memory that's happening kind of just right now. It's not long term. It's more of that short term, what you're working on in that moment. And then you move on and you have to try to get back to, what was I doing? What did I just read? What was I saying? And then finally, action. Monitoring, self-regulating action. So getting yourself to stop and start, right? So again, executive functions really have to do with the ability to start, plan, organize, and stay focused on a task. And what that ends up being is, what that means is that it tends to be all or nothing. Self-regulation executive function is the ability to start and stop basic functions, right? So moderation is really tough with ADHD. Motivation is very, very difficult. It's really hard to start tasks on your own. Time, put things off or lose track of time. Sleep, either you're like not getting enough sleep or you sleep too much. Talking, when someone's talking, can you pay attention? Are you zoning out? So that's kind of the large picture of ADHD. But speaking of a picture of ADHD, here is kind of what typically people think that ADHD, we're gonna have our little iceberg, right? So what you can see at the surface. And what you mostly see at the surface is trouble focusing and attention and the fidgeting part. That's our visible kind of hyperactive attention deficit, right? But self-regulation and executive functions are so important to the vast majority of modern living and functioning that the consequences can be extremely pervasive. Okay, so with a self-regulation deficit, you have so many issues going on under the surface that maybe people are not aware about. So for instance, an impaired sense of time, that visual memory, being able to kind of use hindsight and foresight. I personally like always mix up my time. Like someone will say, oh yeah, remember that time we did something? I'm like, oh yeah, 7 years ago. They'll be like, girl, that was 2 years ago. I have no concept or perspective of time. Sleeping and eating, you know, eating is something that like actually requires attention to either start. So if you get really focused on something, you can't pull yourself out of whatever you're doing, that hyper-focused task, you can forget to eat, or you will binge eat because you just want it all the time. You do everything, all or nothing, right? Communication, there's that blurting, but also articulation. If your mind is like kind of going really fast and jumping here and there, sometimes your mind works faster than your mouth, and you can stammer or kind of have moments of inarticulation. Oh, word recall. We all have that moment where we know the word we want to use and we can't think of it, we can't get it, we know it. But with ADHD, that happens all the time. And the tireder you are, larger, the more your brain has been working, the less able you are to recall words. Then we have that motivation. It's really hard to start and stop things and to spark and maintain motivation. Oh, choice paralysis, difficulty making decisions. Oh, that's so hard. You give me a variety of options to do something, and it's going to take me forever to pick one. And that happens with a lot of kids. Difficulty making decisions. Emotional reactivity, we talked about that. Coexisting conditions. ADHD occurs along with learning and behavior problems, and they tend to be, 60% of kids with ADHD are also diagnosed with behavior problems and other disabilities. So in addition to ADHD, you might have conduct disorder, you might have autism, you might have bipolar. So there are a lot of learning and behavior problems that go along. So that's kind of all under the surface. And if you really look at these things, you'll see things that really affect life, like chronic unemployment, difficulty following conversations, all of these interactions that we have with people, right? Okay. I want to stop talking for a minute. Been talking for too long. And I want to hear about what ADHD, I want to hear about your experiences with ADHD. So what we're going to do is a quick Jamboard activity. And for those of you who haven't used Jamboard, don't worry, it's really easy. So we are going to talk about what you see the ADHD in yourself, with your kids, with your students. Okay, we have 3 different Jamboards. I will show you in a minute. And I'm going to ask you guys to throw some stuff up. So I'm going to place a link in the chat. And if you can click on the link, hold on, in that chat, put it in. So this is Jamboard link. Okay. And Shelby and Carolyn, let me know if it's working or not. Stop share for a minute. Move over to my Jamboard.
Looks good, Rocky.
Okay. Nope, I don't want it here. Can you see my Jamboard?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So this is a Jamboard If you haven't used one, if you look up here, you can move between ADHD at home, at school, and community, and back. I put a stop frame so you don't go past that. You can put your experiences on using a sticky note if you want, and you can type in what you want and save it, and it goes there. Now, when you start, a lot of people, this will happen. Your sticky notes might be on top. You can just move them, okay, if you want. You can edit it like this or delete. So I've made some examples, and go ahead. If you could take a few minutes and just maybe share your stories. They're anonymous. They don't show up with your, the sticky notes don't have your name on it. So if any of you would be willing, I'm gonna stop share for a minute. And if you guys could go ahead and add, and you can move across the different boards at any time as well. So feel free. So I'll give you maybe 3 or 4 minutes.
Rocky, I can give you a notice at like 9:43. Is that enough time?
Yes, that'd be great.
Okay, perfect.
I might move some of these around just to get more space, if that's okay. So some have, to make them bigger. Oops. So I can read them. So I did not bring my space glasses. Thank you guys so much for sharing all these. Feel free to put them right over the title or anything, anywhere you guys can find space. I'll try to make some space too. Okay, we have about a minute left. And we'll kind of review some of these. Okay. If you're not dying, I'm gonna just kind of go pretty quick. I'm not gonna read out each and every one because we don't have time. But I really appreciate you sharing, and you guys will still, if you keep that link, I hope that you guys, I'm gonna leave this Jamboard up so that you have access to this. If you copy and paste that link somewhere else so that you can go and look and read through these all later so you can kind of have a sense of what other people are going. But if you just look really quickly, you know, you can see in some of these already at home, you have trouble getting started, not sitting still, changing routines, that transition between routines, frustrated easily. You put notes everywhere. That's great. That's great. Okay. Or ignore instructions repeatedly. Yes. So I'm going to switch over to school. We have, oh, the loose papers in the backpack, the organization, the blurting, staying awake, watching educational videos. Yes, if you're not interested, it's very difficult to focus. Failing math, oh, student with ADHD, really hard time staying on task. Yep, that was my example. I just read my own example. Yes, so that's true. Rather play piano than eat lunch. Yes, being able to like stop and start, all of these things. Thank you. That focus and being able to do what they want. So in the community, mixed feelings about medication. Yep, that's, I think there's a lot of stigma with medication, a lot. Let's see, children are beginning to self-diagnose. That's interesting through learning about ADHD. I think that's really interesting. Joining sports, yes, we'll talk about exercise. Reminders to watch out for traffic. Oh, here we go. Sticks middle finger at police officer, causing officer to pull over because it's impulsive behavior, right? Okay, cool. Thank you guys so much for sharing that. I'm going to stop share. Again, I wish we had time to go through all of them. But we will, hopefully you guys can look through them. Okay, jump back in. Time, where are we at? 9:45. Okay. I might go quick. What can parents and teachers do to help overall? Like as a whole, everyone can be that external executive function. You can help them with the planning and the prioritizing and the starting and the stopping and making decisions. By putting structure in, by putting routines in, by reminding them, by giving multiple instructions because of working memory. You have to tell kids over and over things. But that's really what our job is as kids kind of develop and start to practice those skills for themselves. Our job is to have it in place for them. Also help them find and activate their motivation, because that's really that all or nothing, stop, start, and it's really difficult. So helping kids kind of observing and watching what their interests are, what their passion sparks, and using that as ways to help. And then understanding their own ADHD. I love that comment about how kids are now kind of, as they learn more about it, self-diagnosing. It's actually pretty important to understand your brain, because there's a lot of struggles involved and there's also a lot of gifts involved, right? So that's kind of the writ large. I'm going to give some basic at home and teaching. So at home, your kid is diagnosed. First thing, behavior therapy, training, get that kid to the therapist, right? No. The training is for you, my friends. My friend always talks about how when her son was diagnosed in second grade with ADHD, she went in to talk to the therapist they had gotten. She was so relieved and she was like, okay, how are you going to help my child? And he said, no, I'm going to spend this time with you and I'm going to help you learn how to help your child. Because parents are the ones who need to be establishing the daily routines, waking up, after school, study time, bedtime. You have to learn how to use daily planners, calendars, timers. Like you're putting in those things and you have to learn how. At home medication, right? That's something a parent decides. And then also really important, physical health, helping your child exercise, sleep, eat, helping them moderate those things. So the basic things that you learn, parents learn in training behavior therapy is positive communication, positive reinforcement, and structure and discipline. Okay, so again, all comes kind of back to that motivation. We're talking about positive communication reinforcement. You can see when we talk about neurotypical, that means um, what we think of as a typical brain, and ADHD brain, maybe we can call it neurodivergent, maybe slightly different, right, type of brain. You can see the people with neurotypical can be like, oh, I got to get this done. It's important and I need to prioritize. I got to do it. With the ADHD brain, you really need that kind of high interest or urgency. That deadline needs to be set. Challenge, novelty, and passion. So again, the reason why I was diagnosed right when I started teaching was my passion for teaching, right? And it really kind of like activated a lot of stuff for me. And I was like, I gotta do better. So parents can praise and encourage for positive behaviors because we really want to focus on that motivation. Rewards and consequences need to be in the moment and relevant. Okay, they need to be like as it's happening. Those long-term consequences, those are the kid has already kind of forgotten by the if you're kind of talking to them 2 hours later about something that happened. It needs to be right then and there, talking to them. Rewards as well, praise in that moment. And then be prepared to have the same conversations over and over again. Like we said, that working memory, right? So here's kind of an example of how you can do this. So I love this comic strip, the ADHD Alien, obviously. And she gives like some great specifics. And so a do of how maybe you could help, a parent could positively help put an executive function and communicate is, let's say, chores. Do concrete deadlines with rewards, okay? So if you clean your room, if you do your laundry, and if you vacuum the living room, these need to be done on Sunday. You need to do all of those by Sunday at 5 p.m. And if you do that, then we can go for ice cream. Put tasks into priority. What should be done first? Help them. You know what? You're going to want to do your clean your room first, then do your laundry, because you need to clean your room, organize your laundry, and then do that. And then while you're doing your laundry, you can vacuum. Help them put it into order, and then start the task with them. Kids need help starting. It's a huge feature. Start the task. Start picking up the room a little bit, and then leave them to do it alone. And then watch and find out, where do they get stuck in that process? Where is their attention going? And kind of pinpoint that and talk to them. So that's kind of an example of that. Okay, I'm gonna go real quick on medication. It's controversial. A lot of people don't feel comfortable with medicating kids, and that's completely understandable. Basically, stimulants, they activate neurotransmitters that people with ADHD do not have a lot of activity with. Dopamine, norepinephrine, those are reward and attention. Okay, so I'm just gonna say, personally, based on the research, pro-med. I'm not saying all kids should be medicated. I'm just saying I don't think that medication is bad. That's what I'm saying. Because we have 40 years of research that says that stimulants are safe for long-term use with kids. They reduce the ADHD symptoms significantly. They're short-acting, so you can just take them for the day. They do not stay in your system after that. And it's, a lot of people are worried about, oh, taking a drug, does that teach them to take drugs? No, it doesn't. The research shows it doesn't, because it brings down the symptoms. Now, kids with ADHD are more likely to engage in risk-taking activities anyway, but it's not correlated with taking medication. Okay, exercise and sleep. Exercise is truly, truly great for all brains in terms of learning, in terms of those executive functions. It really is. But it's particularly great for brains with ADHD because exercise increases those neurotransmitters that I was just talking about, dopamine and norepinephrine. Studies have shown it improves attention, memory, cognitive flexibility, social skills, decreases impulsivity. If you can, get your kids into some kind of regular activity. Martial arts, team sports, those are great because they put structure in and teach kids mindfulness skills as well. Sleep is like a huge red flag. And sleep deprivation, when kids don't get enough sleep, it exacerbates all ADHD symptoms. So work on consistent sleep schedules with your kid. Help them relax, start relaxing activities an hour before they're gonna go to sleep. So, and finally, educate your child about ADHD, right? So explain to them what it is, how it can affect their behavior and thinking, and emphasize that having ADHD can be just a different way of learning and thinking, and has a lot of positive traits as well. It's real. The struggles are real. And there's no way getting around that. And your kid or your student it will impact functioning, but that doesn't mean that it also doesn't have amazingly positive traits as well, right? The importance of this is that you really don't, if they don't know why they have struggle with what they're struggling with, it's very easy for students to internalize, oh, they're just being lazy, you're just being slow and weak, and you're making this choice to not do these things. So let me give you, this is my brief story time. So I've said before that my brother was diagnosed in 3rd grade, and I was diagnosed all the way, at 23 or 24. My brother, he did not, sorry, I have timers going on. The whole time that he was a kid and in high school, he kind of knew why he struggled with what he struggled with. I did not. I really built up a very strong sense of feeling like I had low self-esteem, feeling like I had was making choices. Like it really felt like I was lazy, and that 20 years of thinking I'm not being good enough and I'm not doing well enough because I make those choices really sticks with you. So even though now I know what's going on, that internal voice is always there. It just stays. So that's why I really, really want parents and teachers to kind of make sure that kids don't internalize. And that's in the research too, that low self-esteem is, it's not just me. So my favorite way of introducing ADHD to a child, a younger child, is this analogy by Edward Hallowell. And it's ADHD is like having a race car. It's a race car brain with bicycle brakes, right? Your brain works so fast. It goes and goes and goes, but it has a hard time slowing down when you need it to. So you can say your brain is different, but it's cool. It goes fast. You just need to learn how to sometimes put the brakes on. Right? Okay, I'm sorry, teachers, but I'm going to kind of fly a little bit. You guys will have access. But basically, instructional, what teachers can do. Working memory supports. Remember, kids really, really, really have difficulty remembering things that just were said, as you may know, because you have to say things over and over. So when you give instructions on a task, give instructions one step at a time so kids can do it immediately. But a big thing is don't just say it. Have a written set of those instructions so kids, when they forget, can look back and refer to it, and then just repeat those instructions. With time management, chunk, small bits at a time, not large projects. It can be overwhelming. Give extended time, it takes longer. This presentation took me 20 hours over the last 2 weeks to make. And I have done presentations on ADHD before. It can just take a long time. Have kids graph their behavior, like do self-monitoring, have them graph how many times did you bring in your homework so they can see. And then also, big thing, help kids get started on assignments. Give them a manageable first step. It's so hard to get started. If they have a list of assignments they need to do, you tell them, start here because it's the smallest assignment, and that'll help you. It won't be so overwhelming and feel so anxiety producing. And then also attention and engagement. So use student interest to motivate during learning activities, right? One of my favorite stories from when I was a teacher was I had a ninth grade student who came to me with a third grade reading level. He had ADHD. And he was very bright. He just had never been able to kind of sit down and sit and read books. But he had seen the Harry Potter movies. And I did one of those kind of, 15 minutes of reading every day in my class. And he picked up the first Harry Potter because he had seen it. And he struggled through that book. But he wanted to read it so bad. So he ended up coming in for recess, coming into lunch. He got through that first book and I just praised him so much. Oh my God, that's amazing. By the end of the year, he had read all 7 Harry Potter books and was reading on grade level. Motivation, passion will get you everywhere. Okay, and finally, teachers, positive communication, same thing, parents. Remember, I know it can be frustrating, but don't rely on memory. Don't rely on kids' memory of procedures, and verbal reminders are not enough. Have posters, have written things. Give positive, specific praise in the moment to kids when they're doing something well. So don't just say good job, say thank you so much for sitting down and getting started so quickly. That's so helpful. Look at you, that's amazing. With my student, I was like, I can't believe how much effort and energy you're putting into this book and I'm watching you. That's so great. And then positive reinforcement or rewards. Token economies really work with young kids with ADHD, but you have to remember to change or rotate up the different rewards because there tends to be a habituation, like kids get it real quick. Go, go, go. Finally, don't forget that ADHD and human variety are awesome. So again, like I said, there may be deficits, but there's also so many strengths. And if you look at, the same brain issues that make you hyperactive and reactive also can make you energetic, that hyperactivity makes you energetic. Emotionally reactive can make you empathetic, caring, socially emotionally intuitive. So you're empathizing with people, internalizing feelings. That impulsivity can make you assertive, generous, adventurous, right? And attention, instead of that hyper focus, what can help you pay attention to high interest topics, and you're kind of jumping between different ideas can allow you for creative problem solving. So here are some parent and teacher friendly resources. I really, really recommend Attitude Online and Chad. Those are great for parents and teachers. And here are some of the memes and artists and social media things I follow with ADHD, and they make it great. Okay, we're at the questions part, and I think we have.
Before we do the questions, I did have one question, Rocky. I don't recall you stating at what age you noticed that you had ADHD. I don't recall when.
I did?
Yeah, when you were diagnosed.
I was diagnosed at 24 years old.
Oh, okay.
It was my first year teaching and my first year in my master's program at UH.
Oh, thank you.
What is that, Ray?
I was going to ask because, because October is bullying month. I wanted to, see if you did have were diagnosed in school, how was it when it came to bullying, amongst other children?
Yeah, no, I was very lucky, I think, just for my situation, but my parents, I went to a public school in 6th grade. My parents saw the struggles I was having and put me into a very small all-girls school. So I had less of that social issue for me. But I did see, I've seen that in schools all the time.
Thank you for sharing.
No, I'm gonna be here.
I'm gonna,
Alrighty, so we do have a few questions in the Q&A, so I'm just gonna go ahead and start with the first one. Okay, so Angela asked, can somebody with substance abuse history develop ADHD because of the neurochemical effects of substances on the brain?
I would say that the neurochemical effects of substance on the brain are very mimic. You know, dopamine and norepinephrine are the same chemical reactors. That's a hard one to say whether they can develop ADHD, but a lot of these things kind of cross over. Like, yes, in the sense of those chemicals, those brain regions are activated, but usually to have a diagnostic criteria of ADHD, the symptoms have to present before 12 years old. So you may have symptoms from substance abuse, but you're not going to be diagnosed with ADHD, if that makes sense. Because
Got
it
it.
had to show before 12.
Alrighty. Oh, Christine just had a comment. She just said, son just started high school, maturity has set in, and school is telling me they aren't seeing any concerns in the classroom. Do you have any comments on that comment?
Well, if you just started, I guess the question is the concern that the student had an IEP at some point and worried that that the school's not going to want to continue to provide services? If that's the worry, I would say a 504 plan. I would, go to a 504 plan, which still allows accommodations, but doesn't have the full special education services. If he's doing great, reinforce it. That would be my advice.
Awesome. All right. Next one is ADHD sometimes only diagnosed as an adult?
Yeah. You have to go back historically and, based on your self-reports and parent reports, because you can have your parent, even at 24, I had my parent fill out a report. It has to have shown, again, you have to have some kind of record of having these issues prior to 12 years old. But yes, many people are diagnosed as adults.
Alrighty. Okay. Does trauma also exacerbate ADHD?
Trauma exacerbates everything, unfortunately. Trauma on the brain adds a lot of, stress hormones, chronic stress. Chronic stress has been shown, actually, long-term chronic stress has been shown to basically mimic ADHD symptoms too. So if people who don't have ADHD want to know what it's like, I would suggest thinking back to last year when the pandemic first hit and everybody had to deal with a lot of stress and their lives were completely disrupted. And I heard so many people say, like, I don't know how to work from home, or I'm really struggling with putting in schedules for myself, or I just can't concentrate very well. And I would be like, come on in, the water's warm, welcome to my life. So chronic stress can very much affect executive functioning. And so trauma does exacerbate.
That's awesome. I know, it does really. All right, and our last question for now. Oh, never mind. Someone just put another question. Okay, second to last question. Do you think ADHD is overdiagnosed and misdiagnosed?
I think misdiagnosed, it can be, because it shares, all of these disorder, neurodevelopmental disorders, like share, you know, symptoms. Autism has sensory processing and attention issues. Like I said, bipolar has a lot of similar traits of the emotional reactivity, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think that it can be misdiagnosed. And yes, I also think that, you know, it can be, if you're trying to diagnose a kid very, very early, you know, when they're young and you think they're hyperactive, it could be misdiagnosed if it's just developmental. But I also just want to, again, reinforce that ADHD has been around, like, you know, different brains have been around for history. There's a reason why a lot of people have this brain. It worked really well for a really long time in human history. You know, our current knowledge society is fairly new, right? So that there could be a reason why now all of a sudden when everybody's expected to sit still and pay attention and multitask, why it's kind of considered more dysfunctional. And that's why people seek out help.
Alrighty. Can you say anything more about the need for sleep and how to encourage a spouse or student to get more sleep?
That one's hard. It's really, really hard. Sleep, you know, particularly because adolescents have, you know, sleep issues anyway, but and a lot of adults have sleep issues. That was like a huge red flag for me. My parents would have to like carry me out to the car when I was in elementary school in my pajamas because I could not wake up because I'd stayed up so late reading I couldn't put the book down. It's really hard, but you know, their sleep hygiene, I would say read up on sleep hygiene, which is really about kind of taking out all stimuli from a bedroom. And again, that wind down process, have it be very routine, very scheduled, and have a long time of wind down and relaxation activities prior to that bedtime that you want your kids to go to sleep at, or your husband or spouse.
Awesome. Okay, I think we have time for one more question. And if you folks have more questions that are popping up while Rocky's answering and commenting, she can leave her contact information in the chat. So you can contact her with any questions after the presentation. But last question. So my daughter was diagnosed, oh, there's her contact. Perfect, thanks. My daughter was diagnosed with attention deficit disorder. Is this similar except for the hyperactivity part?
Yes, that would be inattentive. So it used to be called, the last diagnostic manual had them as two different things, ADD and ADHD. In the newest version, they combined it. So everything is under the term ADHD, but you have that inattentive type, which doesn't have the hyperactivity. I don't have any hyperactivity. I wish I had hyperactivity. I wish I had some energy, but I'm still considered ADHD. And so, yes.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Rocky.
Yes, let me go ahead and pop on here. And thank you so much, Rocky, for being here today. You have just gave us so much useful information. So mahalo, mahalo, mahalo.
I just want to say thank you so much for everyone for sharing in the chat and in the jam boards. You had some great ideas. It was awesome. Thank you so much.
Aloha.